Okay, so what if I told you that deep inside your body, right now, there's a hidden brewery? Yeah, a brewery. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? But believe it or not, it's a very real part of our biology. So let's dive in and explore this incredible inner world.
I mean, it sounds like a trick question, doesn't it? But the answer, and this is wild, is yes. For a tiny number of people, eating something as simple as a plate of pasta can literally lead to intoxication. So how on earth is that even possible? Well, the story starts with this really bizarre medical puzzle. So just picture this. For years, doctors kept seeing patients who showed all the classic signs of being drunk. We're talking slurred speech, confusion, the whole 9 yards. But these patients, they swore they hadn't touched a single drop of alcohol. And look, this wasn't denial. This was a real, legitimate, and frankly, an incredibly disruptive medical condition. Eventually, they gave it a name, Auto-Brewery Syndrome, or ABS for short. And you know what? The name is perfectly literal. Your gut, or more specifically, the trillions of microbes living inside it, can act just like a brewery. It takes in carbs, sugars and starches, and ferments them into ethanol, the exact same alcohol you find in beer and wine. Incredible! And yeah, the symptoms are exactly what you'd expect from someone who's had way too much to drink. We're talking about dizziness, slurred speech, a total loss of coordination, even weird behavioral shifts like sudden aggression or euphoria. Seriously, imagine eating a big bowl of pasta and then boom, you feel like you've just slammed several cocktails. That's the day-to-day reality for someone with ABS. Okay, so the big question for the investigators was pretty obvious. What's actually doing the brewing down there? For a long time, the number one suspect was fungi. I mean, it makes sense, right? A species called Saccharomyces cerevisiae, that's just the fancy name for brewer's yeast, is what we've been using for centuries to make beer. It really seemed like an open and shut case. But, as you might have guessed, it turns out that was only part of the story. All right, and this is where the story takes a turn and gets really interesting. Because what researchers found out next, well, it showed that this whole thing isn't just about some rare medical condition. Nope, it's about a fundamental process that's happening inside pretty much all of us. So here it is, the big plot twist. This internal brewing process, it isn't just some bizarre ailment. Your gut, my gut, yeah, practically everyone's gut, is constantly producing tiny, tiny amounts of ethanol. It's just a normal byproduct of digestion. So the real question isn't if your gut is a brewery. The question is, how much is it producing? So let's look at the baseline. In a healthy person, the amount of ethanol being produced is minuscule. We're talking blood levels of maybe up to 3 milligrams per deciliter. Your liver just takes care of it. It metabolizes that tiny amount so easily, you never ever notice it's there. It's a perfectly managed internal system. But things can definitely escalate. In people with really common conditions like metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease, or MASLD, which is basically when fat builds up in the liver, that number can jump a lot. Sometimes it reaches 15 milligrams per deciliter. Now, to be clear, we're still not in the intoxicated range here, but it shows a crystal clear link between a stressed-out metabolism and higher internal alcohol production. Okay, now for the extreme end of the spectrum. In one documented case of Auto-Brewery Syndrome, the patient's blood ethanol level was measured at over, get this, 400 milligrams per deciliter. To put that into perspective for you, the legal driving limit is around 80. So this person's internal brewery was so out of control, their own body was producing 5 times the legal limit for intoxication, all without drinking a single solitary drop. Just wow. So what causes this normally harmless background process to just spiral so dramatically out of control? Well, the answer lies in the really delicate balance of our gut ecosystem. Scientists have a term for this balance. They call it gut homeostasis. A good way to think about it is like a well-run city, where trillions of microbes are all coexisting. The good guys, the beneficial bacteria, they keep the troublemakers in check, maintaining order and keeping things healthy. But when that order gets disrupted, well, that's when things can go very, very wrong. So what kind of things can throw this delicate balance off? You might be surprised. Often it's really common stuff. Things like medications for acid reflux. They reduce stomach acid, which can let certain bacteria overgrow. Broad-spectrum antibiotics. They can act like a nuke in your gut, just wiping out tons of beneficial microbes and leaving a total power vacuum. And then, of course, there's the modern Western diet. It's high in fat and simple sugars. which is basically the perfect all-you-can-eat buffet for these opportunistic ethanol-producing microbes to feast on. And hey, remember how we thought yeast was the main culprit? Well, it turns out some bacteria can be even more potent brewers. Get this. In one landmark study of an ABS patient, researchers found that a specific bacterium, Klebsiella pneumoniae, wasn't just there. It was there in an abundance 900 times greater than in healthy people. 900. And the test for yeast? It came back negative. The whole brewery was being run entirely by bacteria. Okay, this all brings us to a really crucial question. Does it actually matter where the alcohol comes from? I mean, whether it's from a bottle or from your own gut, what's the impact on your health? And the science on this is crystal clear. Your body does not care one bit where the alcohol comes from. Endogenous alcohol, that's the stuff made inside you, and exogenous alcohol, the kind you drink, they have the exact same damaging effects on your organs. Alcohol is alcohol. The damage really starts right at the source, in the intestine. The ethanol starts to compromise the gut barrier. It damages these little things called tight junctions between your cells, leading to what a lot of people call leaky gut. And that's a problem because it lets all sorts of microbial junk seep into the bloodstream, which then triggers inflammation all over your body. And from the gut, where does that ethanol go? Straight to the liver. And the liver just bears the brunt of this assault. It's just like what happens with alcoholic liver disease. This homegrown ethanol causes fat to pile up, it creates intense oxidative stress, and eventually it can lead to serious scarring and inflammation, a condition we call fibrosis. And finally, let's talk about the brain. When the production gets so high that it completely overwhelms the liver, that ethanol reaches the brain. And that is what causes all those symptoms of intoxication we talked about earlier. But it's not just that. Over the long term, it can also lead to chronic neuroinflammation and some serious cognitive problems. Okay, so this all sounds pretty serious, right? So the big question is, can we actually do anything about it? If your internal brewery goes completely rogue, can we bring it back under control? Well, fortunately, the answer is a big yes. Science is actually developing a really clear strategy for taming this hidden process. The approach is super logical, it's very methodical. Step 1, you've got to diagnose the problem. They do this with a glucose challenge test. Basically, they feed the microbes a bunch of sugar and then measure the ethanol spike. Step 2, they use modern genetic sequencing to pinpoint exactly which bacteria are these super producers. And then step 3, they use all that information to create a totally personalized plan to get that gut balance back on track.
And the tools for that personalized plan, they're becoming incredibly sophisticated. I mean, it often starts with diet, which makes sense. You're essentially starving the problem microbes of all the simple sugars they love to eat. But it can also include some really advanced therapies, things like fecal microbiota transplants. And I know that sounds pretty weird, but it's an amazing way to introduce a complete, healthy ecosystem of microbes from a donor. And science is getting even more targeted with things like selective antibiotics or even phage therapy. That's where they use specific viruses to literally hunt down and eliminate only the bad bacteria, leaving all the good guys untouched. It's amazing stuff.
And all this brings us to a final, and I think really powerful thought. Look, we started this whole journey by looking at Auto-Brewery Syndrome as this super rare, really extreme condition. But what we've learned is that the underlying mechanism, our own gut microbes producing ethanol, is universal. It's happening in all of us, right now. So the big question I want to leave you with is this. Could the subtle, chronic imbalances in our own internal breweries be a major hidden driver of modern metabolic diseases like fatty liver disease? The answer to that, well, it could fundamentally change how we view our health and the trillions of tiny brewers we all share our bodies with.